We're live.
Good evening. I will call this meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. As just a note of explanation, I'm chairing this meeting via Zoom virtually because I came down with COVID last week. So following the medical guidelines as well as our own human resources guidelines, I am virtual and chairing this meeting. So I'm going to ask Pam Whitmore to further explain the exceptions that allow that. Pam is our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. So the legislature in the most recent session passed an amendment to the open meeting law, a statute which allows for an elected official to join from a private location in those instances when there is a medical, personal medical or family medical reason to do so, and that is for up to 3 times every year annually.
Okay, thank you, Pam. So I am live from my basement. So just a couple procedural things for the council. I will be chairing the meeting. However, if at any time that we lose connectivity or the Wi-Fi goes down or things get particularly disruptive within the council chambers, and Craig Schaefer as President Pro Tem will assume the chair of the meeting. So also voting, we will vote by roll call. So when it's time for a vote, we call for the vote. City Clerk Stephen Anderson will do the roll call, and we'll vote by voice as he reads your name. With that, we have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda? If not, we're operating under that agenda. The first item then is consider the approval of the minutes from the August 8th work session as well as the regular meeting. So the council does have the minutes of both of those meetings. Are there any corrections to note at this time?
No, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by, you'll have to help me, is that C?
Amanda.
Motion by Amanda, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And Stephen?
Schaefer,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Alcorn,
Aye.
Muleski,
Aye.
Burns.
Aye, and the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 2. This is a public hearing. This is a public hearing on the proposed assessments for the unpaid services. So we will have the public hearing, and then following the public hearing, then we will consider the resolution that it would adopt the or unpaid services. So I will call on Stephen Anderson to conduct this public hearing. Stephen will give a brief explanation, then we'll open it up for any public input from those property owners that maybe want to question or contest the proposed assessments. Stephen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a public hearing for unpaid services from earlier this year, and some of the assessments were also from the end of last year. A majority of these services were for mowing and snow removal. The process for these unpaid services is usually initiated when a concern is brought to the attention of the city. After the concern is brought to the city, our fine street department will usually go out and check and see if the concern is valid. If it is, a letter will usually be sent to the property owner and give them a certain amount of time to make sure that the concern gets taken care of. Once the deadline passes, if it's not, the city will hire a contractor to either have the lawn mowed or to have the snow removed. Then as of 2 weeks ago, I did send out another final letter before we had this public hearing here. From that time, we have had 4 people that were originally on our list that have since paid, and there are 2 additional. On the list is 705 East Main and 214 Carroll. They indicated that they do have checks in the mail. So once we get those payments, we'll let the Lyon County Auditor Treasurer's Office know that those have been paid, and then that assessment will get removed and it won't be added to their property taxes for payable 2024.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. We'll open it up as part of this public hearing for any member of the audience who would like to speak as part of the public hearing. Or any member of the council that would have questions about this process.
I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by John to close the public hearing. Discussion? If not, we'll move to the roll call vote. Stephen?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Schroeder,
Yeah, aye.
Alcorn,
Aye.
Muleski,
Aye.
Burns.
And yes. So that motion does pass. We'll move then to the resolution that would adopt the unpaid services assessment. Are there any questions about that resolution?
I move approval of the resolution adopting the unpaid services.
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Once again, Stephen.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Yes.
Alcorn,
Aye.
Muleski,
Aye.
Burns.
Aye. So the motion does pass. We'll move, anything else on this, Stephen?
There is not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll move then to the consent agenda. The items on the consent agenda, I believe, are up on the screen, and they include the introduction of the ordinance, section 18-2 key box. Consider the approval of the Red Baron Arena and Expo and Lockwood Motor sponsorship agreement. Consider the temporary extension of the alcohol license area for Brown Brothers Brewing Company. Consider the approval of a temporary on-sale liquor license for the Marshall Area Chamber of Commerce. Declare the speed trailer for the Marshall Police Department as surplus property. The revision of the Emergency Operations Plan, the EOP, for the City of Marshall, and consider the approval of the bills and the project payments. So is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants removed for separate discussion? If not, is there a motion for the items on the consent agenda?
I so move.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by C, to approve all of the items on the consent agenda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a roll call vote.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Yes.
Alcorn,
Aye.
Muleski,
Aye.
Burns.
Aye. And the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 10. This is a report, the annual report for the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. I cannot see the audience, but I assume Marty Seifert is prepared to, is Marty there?
Yep, right here.
Okay, so we welcome and thank Marty for his services and welcome him here this evening to give our annual report. So welcome, Marty.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Marty Seifert. I work with the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities through Flaherty and Hood. Marshall's been a longtime member of the coalition. We are made up of over 100 cities. I have up on the screen those that belong. We think a lot of them as the quote-unquote county seat towns and sub-regional centers, if you will, across Greater Minnesota. We focus on bread and butter issues that our board of directors asked us to work on, including local government aid, property tax issues, environment, economic development, transportation, annexation, and labor and employment issues. Top issues for 2023 included local government aid. We saw a $150 million LGA increase. And I have some details, and there's a handout or packet that was at your desk that gives a little bit more detail to all of these things. I have a customized handout for Marshall at your table. It's a bar chart that looks like this that just talks about Marshall's impact through the tax bill on local government aid. So your current law LGA is $2,707,000. The LGA proposal we had, Marshall would have had 3.5 million. The House proposal, 3.25. The governor and Senate, 2.9. And then the final product, and you're all in government here and understand you have to compromise and work together to figure things out with the budget, was $3.129 million. So if you look at Marshall's increase, I just looked at kind of some of the other cities across Minnesota. Marshall came out very well, $422,000 increase in local government aid, which will be very helpful as you look to try to hold your levy down and prioritize spending for different items for the city. Bonding bill, which was not done the year before, we focused on PFA grants, which help with sewer and water funds, child care facility grants, BDPI money, which Marshall has accessed in the past, and other infrastructure, a lead line inventory and replacement bill, ongoing funding for city streets of all sizes, corridors of commerce funding, child care, economic development, and workforce housing development. So we had a whole big kind of unexpected session because of the DFL trifecta. So we had a very exciting session this year trying to figure out how to handle the new government as it was constituted in the last election. Budget surplus ballooned to the biggest record level that we've ever had in Minnesota history. I kind of broke it down one time and ongoing. Lots of one-time surplus that was available. So unique challenges, the volume and speed of legislation. Metro members, after redistricting, now have a majority of the members of the legislature for the first time in Minnesota history. An outright majority instead of kind of sort of half and half. It's about 54, 55, 56% Metro, House and Senate. And no backstop if there's something that was harmful, where before you had a Republican Senate and a DFL House and the governor, and they kind of had to hash it all out. Nobody could be too extreme. Local government aid, as I mentioned, Marshall came out with over $400,000 increase. We saw it 150 and a inflation population adjustment. We ended up with a boost for LGA. The tax target, of course, competed with all these other things like Walls checks and housing aid and tax credits and things of that nature. The governor proposed a $30 million appropriation in his first budget, and then when the supplemental budget came out later, he increased it to $40 million. We had aggressively lobbied members of the legislature. We had testimony from various mayors and folks that talked about the impact of LGA, and we lined all of that up as well as our authors. And here's the different increases, and the final outcome, of course, was $80 million in each year of the biennium, which was a compromise amongst everybody. So you can see it's kind of the middle of the road, but it was an increase, which was nice. On bonding, we had no bill in 2022, which was a bonding year. It does require bipartisan support. The Constitution requires 60% majority to borrow money in Minnesota, and because the Senate is 34-33, just a bare one-vote majority, they did have to have GOP support for that. And at the end of the day, they did work together to get a bill passed. There was a cash bill that the Democrats had threatened to pass on their own, where they did not need any Republican votes because it wasn't bonding or borrowing, but they backed off on that at the end of the day. We pressed very hard for the Senate GOP to work with everybody to try to get this done, which at the end of the day they did. The big holdout that they had was $300 million more for nursing homes that traditionally tend to be located in rural areas. And so they agreed to put the extra money into nursing homes. The Republicans agreed to pass the bonding bill. And so everything worked out fairly nice. So the final outcome on the right-hand side for the priorities that the board of directors set out: PFA, which helps with sewer and water, $208 million. BDPI, which is kind of your infrastructure. When a new business relocates to a town in rural Minnesota, it's an only rural program. This helps with things like sewer lines, water lines, a service road, things of that nature, public infrastructure, not paying for their stuff, but paying for the public infrastructure. Some housing and childcare, and some roads and bridges. So why did it finally come together? All of these things, putting public pressure from folks like you, from us, the media, and legislators willing to compromise at the end of the day. An environment, we got a bill that was a record amount for lead line replacement. I think all of you have read about things in other states like Michigan and Mississippi and other places where People are literally being poisoned with lead, old lead pipes. There is no safe amount of lead in the drinking water, so trying to get ahead of it with the federal mandate. $240 million is a down payment to help cities. At the end of the day, if we didn't have an appropriation like this and you guys had lead line prevalent throughout some of these older cities that were built in the 1870s, 1880s, like Marshall, and I don't know where we stand on the lead process, you're the bad guys because the city council would end up having to assess the homeowners for the full amount of replacing these lead lines, which would not be a fun vote to take. So this will help assist with that. You may end up doing a little bit of that. But we're hopeful that the state legislature will cover a lot of this. It's a federal mandate, which comes down to a state mandate, which ends up getting pushed down to you. Our job at the coalition is to try to protect our councils from having to assess all of this stuff onto the homeowners. If it's a mandate from the state, they should have to pay for it, is kind of our theory. So we had some historic investments in water resources. Playing defense on some things. There were some bills that would make it almost impossible to get wastewater permits for our cities. And so we had to head that off at the pass. There was another one to change the PFA formula that would have hurt rural Minnesota cities, and we got that taken out. That was in 2 different committees that came through. Representative Schumacher from Laverne was successful in pulling it out in one of the committees. Looking ahead, next year is a traditional bonding year. This year was the makeup year for not having one the year before. There'll probably be another surplus. We're not sure about constitutional amendments. There's fix-it items, obviously, from this last year, lots of policy. Session starts a little later, February 12th, right after precinct caucuses, and then the election in the fall will have the president, the U.S. House, 1 Senate seat, and all of the Minnesota House seats, no state Senate seats. Summer conference has come and gone, but our fall conference is in Wilmer, a little bit closer than Thief River Falls. If any of you could make it, it would be wonderful. November 15th to the 17th, we'll be talking about the upcoming legislative priorities and also focus on some jobs and economic development themes for that particular conference. There's supplemental information in this packet. I tried to pound about 50 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound bag because I know you're busy. I can stand for whatever questions you might have.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Marty. Questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor, maybe you're going to mention this, but we really appreciated Marty's help with our aquatic center, the special legislation, and I know you'll add something to this, but we would be at ground zero without your work in the legislature getting us support from Representative Swedinsky and Senator Dames. So really appreciate that.
And I would echo that in that the Marty's services were invaluable. His knowledge of the process, his presence there, and his tenaciousness in following up on details, no matter if it was on a weekend or a Sunday night or whatever. He was always in contact and let us know what we needed to know to support the effort. So thank you, Marty.
I appreciate it, and apologies to bugging Sharon and the mayor at 7 in the morning on a Sunday or 2 a.m. on a Friday or whatever when the committees are meeting. And of course, we don't expect you to be there at all times where we are. So, and we do appreciate the fact that the council's supportive of trying to get something figured out. I think we now have the 2nd oldest pool in the state of Minnesota, something like that. And I think Pelican Rapids might be the oldest, and they're replacing theirs. I just found out 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So I appreciate the work that you all did, and we'll look forward to you getting that done.
And probably just as important, we appreciate the work that the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities and the team that Marty works on. It's Marty's a valuable member of that team, but there's others on that team too that focus on specific areas, be it housing or the environment or LGA or other areas too. So it's good to have the expertise there representing cities like the city of Marshall. Any other input from the council?
I want to echo, Mr. Mayor, what you said and what Sharon said. Marty, thanks a lot for your guidance. I know Councilmember Lozinski and I went to day on the Capitol Day, and it was very helpful and helping us guide through the key people to talk to, and then really supporting the efforts that Marshall and the other greater Minnesota cities are doing. We really appreciate your support and your knowledge and your dedicated effort. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. Any other comments? If not, we'll move along with the agenda. So thank you, Marty. The agenda item number 11, consider the request of Tad and Teresa Einen for a variance adjustment permit and a conditional use permit. I'll call on Jason Anderson to introduce this.
Mr. Mayor, if it's all right with you, Ilya Gutman is here as well to present this item.
Okay, thank you. And I should note the location of this this application for this. It's an advertising sign. Location is 511 on Highway 23 South. Okay, Ilya.
Thank you, Mayor Council. So this is a request for the billboards to be placed at 511 Highway 23. All billboards or advertising signs require conditional use permits, and the ordinance specifically lists several conditions for approval of a conditional use. In this particular case, one of the conditions is not met because that condition is that the sign should be at least 100 feet from the closest residential residence district. In this case, you can see that it's only 93 feet. So in this case, it requires a variance to comply with the ordinance. So you can see there are two things here. One is the variance and one is the conditional use permit. In order to approve the variance, the ordinance and the statutes require meeting the specific practical difficulties test. And in the memo and in the finding of facts, there are some explanation of that thing. Staff opinion is that in this case, it does meet that requirement, those requirements due to the odd shape of the lot. But in order to mitigate some problems with that, the conditions for the variance require planting trees between the sign and the residence district next to that thing. So it will mitigate the distance between them. So if the variance is approved, then the conditional use may be approved. But as I said, there are two motions here. One is a variance and one is a conditional use permit. If the variance is not approved, then the conditional use permit cannot be approved.
And your recommendation that
Is to-
should happen as separate
Correct.
motions.
Yes, separate motions.
Okay. Okay, we'll open up for discussion from the council and questions.
This came before Planning Commission. The public hearing was held there. There were no neighbors present. John and Brian Core were there. They have a billboard that is just up the road. But there wasn't a lot of concern with the commission about this billboard in particular. At the time, the sign people they had proposed a taller sign, and they were willing to bring it down to bring that in within the limits of the code as well. So not a lot of concern.
So request now is for the 30-foot high
Correct,
sign,
the correct, like,
which
yeah.
means the ordinance requirement. That's why I didn't bring it up.
It's
It means
changed
the
a little.
ordinance.
And then just for
Okay.
clarity too, this is not a digital sign. It's what we would consider like a standard panel sign.
Correct, with the lighting.
Yes,
From
yeah,
the bottom.
up light or down light, but not a digital,
Correct.
like a backlighted bright sign.
Correct.
So where's the location exactly? I know you have the address there, but
It's right in front, right next to the today's fireplace, Highway 23.
oh, by the fireplace. Okay. Okay.
And then this aerial photo, that was taken prior to that building being built, right?
Correct, the building is already there, and that's, the site plan shows that the building is there.
Yeah. Okay. Other input from the council? If not, you have the recommendation from staff for the variance. What are the wishes of the council?
I move granting the variance pursuant to the conditions listed in the agenda packet.
Okay, motion by Craig. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion?
There's two recommendations. Are we?
Right, this is just for the variance.
Right. Discussion on the motion to allow the variance? If not, Stephen, you can call the roll call.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Schroeder,
Yes.
Alcorn,
Aye.
Mulesky,
Aye.
Burns.
Yes, the motion does pass. I'll now entertain a motion for the conditional use permit.
I move granting the conditional use permit as proposed.
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by, was that Amanda?
Yes.
Seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Stephen?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Schroeder,
Yes.
Alcorn,
Aye.
Mulesky,
Aye.
Burns.
Aye. And the motion does pass. So thank you, Ilya. We'll move then to agenda item number 12, the resolution establishing an absentee ballot board. I'll call on Stephen Anderson to present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a resolution to form a absentee ballot board for the city of Marshall. This is required under Minnesota election law because as of September 22nd, the city of Marshall will be doing absentee balloting here at City Hall. It'll be at the second floor at the city clerk's office. So if anyone wants to absentee, they'll be at my office upstairs. Like I said, that'll be from September 22nd until November 6th. And then Saturday, November 4th, from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m., there will also be absentee voting available here at City Hall.
Very good. Any questions for Stephen?
Mr. Mayor, could I
Go ahead.
ask
Yes,
Stephen,
sir.
just to clarify, typically absentee balloting occurs at the courthouse, so just kind of explain maybe, did the county believe we should do it? I think it's good that we're doing it, but it would be a change for voters who typically vote absentee. They will have to come to City Hall, and then has the Secretary of State been notified?
Yes, normally citizens from Marshall will typically absentee vote at the courthouse, but because this is an off-year election and it's not considered a state general election, the county does not have to administer doing absentee ballots. So they have said that the city can do it on their behalf. And I believe the Lynn School District is also doing their own absentee balloting as well. So the two special elections that are occurring this year are going to be at their specific locations that is not at the courthouse. And yes, the Secretary of State has been notified that City Hall will be our voting location for this fall.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Stephen? If not, I'd entertain a motion for the resolution establishing the absentee ballot board.
I move the resolution.
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by, help me who that was.
Amanda.
Seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, Stephen, would you call the roll?
Schaefer,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Yes.
Alcorn,
Aye.
Mulesky,
Aye.
Burns.
Yes, the motion does pass. Thank you, Stephen. We'll move then to agenda item number 13, discuss and consider the city ordinance for outdoor storage units. So this was this was brought by staff to the Legislative Ordinance Committee for discussion, as it was previously discussed by the Legislative Ordinance Committee, and staff was implementing it. And so this is really a check-in with the council of, is this really the way that we want this to work? With that, Jason, do you have any comments you want to make? Otherwise, members of the Legislative Ordinance Committee that are in attendance can also weigh in.
Yeah, sure, Mayor. I can give a quick introduction. As the mayor identified, the purpose of this agenda item is just to discuss the City Ordinance 86-248 outside storage, specifically as it relates to shipping containers in residential and business districts in Marshall. Over the last 2 to 3 years, there's been quite a bit of discussion regarding the use of shipping containers in these districts in our community. And we've made various changes, I would say, throughout the past couple of years in this ordinance. And staff is looking for just a confirmation from the city council that as the ordinance is written, we're happy with it as it's written, and we're happy with the city staff, the level of enforcement that we're taking right now, and that you'd like to see us continue to follow through on the current path. So just wanted discussion regarding shipping containers and if there's anything that we should look at doing differently from the council's perspective. Thank you.
Okay. Any input from the Legislative Ordinance Committee?
No, well said. Thank you.
So I'll give an opinion here. The ordinance and a lot of good work went into the ordinance, and and it really addresses very well the new shipping containers for storage units that would be going in. I think the question, of course, is the ones that were existing prior to that time, and then what should be done with that? Should retroactively the city go out and require either removal or consistency with the current ordinance, or as an alternative, should it be with the existing ones? Should it be based on complaints similar to the earlier action that we had regarding lawn weeds and snow and that type of thing, where it was complaint driven? So and the issue really comes up with those units that really no neighbor is complaining about, but yet it is really not in compliance. So they received a letter from the city. So is that really the way that we want the staff to spend their time on enforcing things that no one has complained about? So there may be that may have sparked some other thoughts and some other discussions and some other opinions or other views. So I would welcome those also.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'll start out here is that I've had mixed emotions about where we started with this and was apprehensive. I think that the application of the current ordinance and the way our staff has worked with that, I think has worked really pretty well. And I think, again, as with most of our ordinances and the applications, it's about using compliance discretion, enforcement discretion. You know, things need to make sense. No ordinance is going to fit everything we really want and push and try to encourage our businesses and local properties to get a lot of use or get their best use. And I mean, I can think of a couple of our larger box stores that went through significant change in the past 6 to 9 months and utilized a lot of temporary conics or container storage. And I thought they did a good job of working with it. We had a few that probably 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when this all came forward in discussion, maybe didn't do such a good job. They looked a little sloppy. They were kind of placed willy-nilly on some of the properties, and that I think has changed significantly. There's still always, with everything, there's a few places maybe we'd like to see it better, but I really think that our staff has done a good job. I'm not in favor of going out and sweeping the community to find the quote-unquote non-conformers, and I think like everything else, part of me doesn't want to see things get to a point where we wait until neighbors are so irritated that they complain about each other, but by the same token, I don't want our staff spending a lot of time dogging this stuff out. So I think if there's opportunities that we see where maybe somebody could be getting to where they're going to start generating complaints, maybe that's where staff can have a conversation with those individuals or property owners and see. But I really don't have any complaints about the way it's working. I don't know that staff have concerns about the way it's working, but unless we need to change something, I'm pretty happy with the way this has gone. I know it was a little bit of kind of an ebb and flow so to speak, to kind of get our feet on the ground of exactly what do we mean by this. But I think it's worked out pretty well. I think that we need to encourage people to take advantage of whatever things are there for them to make changes, improvements, or adjustments in their business to be effective and doable for them. And if containers work, I think they're a very secure and effective way to do that temporary, interim, or even some options of permanent, just because they can come and go as they need them. So I don't see a need to make changes.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, Craig. I think this started out much more strict than it is now, and it's come to a good
Yeah.
middle ground, and it's good the way it is, I think.
Okay, any other opinions or views?
If I could ask a question for clarification, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Jason.
So there are a few properties that have come through the process and received interim use permits. Shall we continue to follow through with the existing process, the existing folks that have received notification from the city that we have started down the path of asking them to remove or screen their shipping containers? Or is this, we'll also be looking for direction that we should continue down the path with the people that we've already reached out to?
And you haven't gotten a lot of pushback on that, right? I mean, it's people are complying when they're brought aware of it, or not?
I think we're to the point where we'll need to send some more correspondence, make some more phone calls to see more follow through.
Yeah, I think if I could jump in here, Jason, I think you've had input, and I've had two of the three that have gone through the process reach out to me, and it's public. One of them is Skew's Jewelry, where they have a container for their companion business. It's in the parking lot. They painted it. There's no neighbors there. To be in compliance, he would need to put a, Jason, help me, 8-foot fence around it, which may actually look less attractive than what's there right now. So that's one that he's gone through the process, and so he's at the point of either he has to do it or he's not in compliance and he's in trouble. The other would be the mattress barn, where he has a trailer that is used for daily receiving, and then daily when their crews, delivery crews show up after their routes, they come back and remove what was delivered from that trailer and then put it where it's supposed to be. And then, so that one is kind of a unique thing. And if that trailer had to be removed, they would probably have another truck sitting there to serve that purpose. And a fence around there. The trailer's like 12 foot tall, and an 8-foot fence would not provide masking for a 12-foot tall trailer on wheels. So those are the kind of two examples where they both kind of went through the process as the ordinance outlines, but they're also saying, this doesn't really make a lot of sense for our business either. So I think those are the two examples that came forward to me.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, I guess I have a feeling or an opinion on both of those scenarios. I kind of in the opening, when we first started talking about this, I know we talked about the need for screening based on some of the containers being more than secondhand and looking rough and looking like containers. And I had kind of understood that one of the options would be as if they're painted a neutral or agreeable color that, would be similar to a fence or another structure in the area, that they didn't look like a multi-time used container, but looked a little more fitting to the neighborhood, that would be acceptable. I can think of a number of different fence patterns that I could use that would give me the same basic look as a corrugated side on a shipping container. So if the container is clean and painted like at Skew's, I have no problem with that. And I actually went back deliberately as this issue came up, a month and a half ago, and looked at that, and I have no problem with what they've done there. I think that's fine. And I would agree with the mattress barn thing too. I know we had a similar situation where Avera was using storage trailers temporarily while they were doing remodeling, and there were some concerns about those. And Now, the one trailer was red, and you could tell it had been repurposed from a industrial garment leasing outfit, and that trailer was a bit gaudy, so then they put that one so that it was in-facing. They moved them to a different area of their parking lot and kind of screened it with the other trailer that looked more, I guess I would say, normal as a 53-foot semi-trailer. So as it pertains to the mattress barn, as long as that trailer looks serviceable and not rusty and like, you know, we can't tell if it's screening for a salvage yard or if it's a trailer being used by a retail outlet. I think it's fine that they do that too. It was kind of my point too, if they move it once a week or once a year, or if they don't move it at all, if it looks like it could have been moved in yesterday, if it still looks like a semi-trailer in use, that's part of our commercial retail business. And if they're using it that way and it's not creating other problems, I don't want to see them build a fence around a trailer if it looks like a trailer in a place where a trailer could be. That makes a lot of sense, right? No. But I don't want us spending a lot of time to make everything look like a round peg in a round hole. I mean, we need to use that discretion, I guess, is kind of where I'm going with it.
Yeah, I think, Jason, the other property that went through the process was the Comfort Inn, where they have a container, but it's painted to basically match the property there. So
Yeah, I don't know that, is the Comfort Inn's trailer up, Ilya? Is that up, or shipping container? It's not up yet, but they have a permit to place one with a screen, but,
There's also, the container is there. There's no.
okay,
Yeah.
the fencing is not there, the container is, and then the other one is Independent Lumber, which is a container there without the fence? So there's a few of them out there.
This ordinance says it may be screened by fencing or landscaping means. I mean, okay. I was just, as if we're requiring people to have a fence, then we either need to change the ordinance or not. But this seems,
Yeah, the current ordinance is written that they do need to be screened from a right-of-way or a park or any other business or residence district. So they do have to have a screen from your neighbors and the public ways, essentially. And the screen can either be a fence or a vegetative fence. So if we're looking to amend that, we can certainly work with LNO to propose different language. But city staff just is looking to find a home for what we really want the language to read.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor,
go ahead, Pam.
from a legal perspective in enforcement, we need to get to a place where we have an ordinance that can be enforced in a reasonable manner that's equal, without having discretionary decisions that are that are different from how our ordinance reads, so that people feel like they're treated unequally, and then we have to deal with the arguments of arbitrary and capriciousness in our enforcement. So.
thank you. That's kind of where I was going with it. It seems like a little wishy-washy, and so we have to, I don't know, come to a determination one way or the other, or something. I don't know what the answer is.
If I may just propose that, if it's the council's wishes that the language reads differently, then I suppose the motion could be to send this back to committee to rework it. But just looking for that guidance of whether we're happy with the way it's written or whether it needs to be workshopped.
So I guess this gets back in my side to, there's probably 4 or 5 places in Marshall that I can go buy a pre-constructed on skids utility shed that looks like a little utility shed. And some of them look like little chicken coops, and some of them look like barns, and some of them look like something that was done in a shop class in the 10th grade, but they're still considered a shed. We don't require permits for them if they're under 200 square feet, and they can put them down. I could take a container like that, paint it, and put some rafters on it, and there you go, and I don't have to screen anything. Or I could build my own shed and not put rafters on it and put a flat roof on it, and I could make it look just like a container, but it's not a container. Somebody who's no longer here on the council contended that, well, those things, the shipping containers aren't sturdy like a shed. Well, I beg to differ. They're made to bounce around on a ship around the world, and they get dropped and things still survive in them. So actually for sturdy, durable and stuff, it's probably the best dime you can spend if you're looking for that size temporary storage. They're very secure and they're watertight and they're mouse tight. So I don't want to make it too hard for people to use them as if they're practical. I don't want it to look like we're storing a community to store junk containers. But if they're painted and they look decent and they look as decent or uniform as a commercially produced portable shed, then I want to stop picking on them. Because I think we're picking on them, and it kind of bothers me a little bit. I don't want them next to on my side yard without, but I could live with it if they did it decent. But when the ones that we talk about in these commercial areas, I don't know that this is time well spent. I don't know how we get the ordinance right to where we leave that alone, as long as it doesn't look like a 10 or 12-year-old multi-times around the world rusted up ocean bearer, and it's painted up clean and it looks uniform. I think we need to start leaving them alone.
So Jason, back to your inquiry, does this need more discussion at committee? I would say based on this discussion, yes, it probably does need to go back to the Legislative Ordinance Committee for some further discussion.
I agree with you, Mayor.
Any other, Pam, are you okay with that?
Yes, absolutely. I think, from everything I've heard, staff wants to enforce whatever directive the council provides. And there just needs to be consistency because there's confusion otherwise.
Right, and I think in fairness to staff, we want to put them in a position where they can serve the public in a meaningful way too. So and not have to enforce something that will put them in an awkward place. So
Can I add one comment? I do think possibly the Councilmember Schaefer talking about consistency with their surroundings or the other building. I'm not convinced one of the properties is consistent and looks like their current building. So we still may have an issue with one of the properties. But, maybe again, that's my opinion. But I've driven past it and I don't think it looks consistent.
Which site is that?
That's the Brennan Clark property. That trailer doesn't match their
mattress.
building at all.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's moved in the last year and a half.
No. But maybe there's something written where it's, I don't know.
So if it's meets with the wishes of the council, this was good discussion. The next step for this discussion would be back at committee at the Legislative Ordinance Committee. Is that okay with everyone?
Sure.
Okay. With that, then we'll move on to agenda item number 14, Commission Board Liaison Reports. Craig, we'll start on your end.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing that I have is just kind of a word up that we did have interviews last week for a new coordinator for the Merit Center. So had a number of interested candidates, had a couple of good days of interviews, and hopefully there'll be things to report in the near future. That's all I have.
Very good. Thank you, Craig. Amanda.
EDA didn't meet, and I unfortunately couldn't make the public housing meeting, and we talked about planning commission this evening, the only thing on the agenda, so that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Amanda. John?
Nothing.
And C.
CVB and library do not have August meetings.
Okay. We will then move to council member individual item C. Let's start on your end.
I have no updates.
And John?
Nothing.
Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sounds of Summer last weekend was awesome. The things that I was able to attend, I had the distinct privilege of accompanying city staff in the parade. It was a lot of fun. My wife and I did that. And then the entertainment was great. And then also today, Mr. Mayor, thank you for allowing me to stand in for you at the ribbon cutting at the Terrace 1872. It was well attended. Thank God we had a forecast for snow. We didn't have any of that today, so we were snow free. So it was nice. And I just want to tell people, if you haven't stopped to look at Terrace 1872, which is between the coffee shop and City Hall, where the former location of the hotel, take a look at it. It's a great place to, if you need to meet up with somebody and you're looking for a place where you can sit down and chat, that's a great place to do it. It's a great place to pick up some lunch and go sit there and chat, or pay attention to some of the entertainment that's happening there in the evenings throughout the summer. And I just see that being more and more utilized in the community to have just another thing to bring the community together kind of socially and casually. It's a really, really nice space, and I'm proud that we done that work in the city. And I want to thank Preston and all the other people that were involved in making that happen. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Craig. And Amanda?
No, I'm not really anything. The terrace ribbon cutting was really well attended, like Craig said, and it is very beautiful. So I hope people do check it out. But that's it. I unfortunately couldn't make Sounds of Summer. I heard it was awesome.
Well, thank you, Amanda. And because of my isolation, I also was absent at Sounds of Summer, but I do really commend and hats off to all the volunteers and the Sounds of Summer committee that worked on not only this year's, but on the previous 14 years of Sounds of Summer. So it's a great event for the summer. Last week also, I was able, before I went into isolation, was able to help at the Mustang Move-In Day, which was really good. And the president did share with me that their enrollment numbers are very encouraging, and probably the numbers aren't finalized at this time and won't be until a couple weeks into August and into September, when students make their final decision. But enrollment numbers are up, and that is very unusual in the state of Minnesota system. So I think Southwest State and Marshall is one of two institutions, four-year institutions in the state system that have enrollment increase, and SMSU at this point has the highest of any of those two. So, and a number of other ones have, some fairly alarming enrollment declines. So we're in a good place with our partner university here in the city of Marshall. With that, let me move on then to staff reports. Sharon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, also very appreciative of Councilmember Schaefer's help at the parade. He did drive one of our parade entries, which was our parks truck and our trailer, and we had really good feedback. I did send this to you via email. We have a September 7th community walkthrough of the Aquatic Center. So we're going to run some ads in the newspaper too, kind of for maybe those that haven't been there, aren't a frequent user of the pool. So we're going to show some deficiencies, and we're also going to talk about reuse of the site and get some input. So I think that'll be a good event for council and the public to check out more. Last week, the mayor and staff did talk with a University of Minnesota expert on retail sales and sales tax, and we are soon to get a final report. But the draft report indicated that sales tax paid for by people outside the city is at 67%. So a lot of the revenue that we're utilizing for Red Baron and Merritt, and soon to be Aquatic Center, if we get an approval on November 7th, is paid for by outside the community. And we'll do a lot of information sharing. I know there's been some talk about property tax increases for the Aquatic Center, and we know this well, but just to communicate, it will be, if approved, a sales tax revenue generated project to pay for the construction. And one other thing, I know the mayor and I participated in a conversation with Downtown Business Association on some activity that we've had in terms of vandalism and just some other traffic. We know that our park system has had that as well. And the police department actually has made some progress in both apprehension of a parks vandalism individual and then some individuals that has been causing some of the issues downtown. And I know Jim's not here, but one of the things he keeps reiterating, it's, there's several pillars of the justice system, law enforcement, our police department, and then we got prosecution. Our county attorney was at this meeting as well, did a great job kind of explaining what they can and cannot do, and then, of course, the courts, but it's also the community. And so just being the eyes and ears for our police department, we've got a lot of square miles to cover, 10 square miles, 100 local roads and state roads, and so just the big area. And I think actually, having the community be aware and our businesses probably helped with some progress on this. But I know that police chief is going to work with the chamber and the Downtown Business Association a little bit further on some further measures. So, but I just wanted to comment on that. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any questions for Sharon? If not, Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. I can give a quick project update. Channel Parkway remains closed and still scheduled to be closed through at least September 15th. Concrete work is occurring right now. They've done removals in the medians and islands, and they're doing concrete pouring. And once they get that done, we'll see the mill come in and we'll start paving. Seal coats are completed. You saw them come in town real quickly yesterday, get in and out, and we'll have loose rock on those streets for about a week. So take caution if you're on those streets. Early next week, we expect them to come in and get that swept up. Legion Field Pond project is going as of this week again. They're digging that pond basin. They'll be digging for probably 2 to 3 weeks. So there's a lot of material to remove. So you'll see that happening. Third and Lion downtown, going pretty well. The contractor still has water and sewer services to put in on Lion Street from 3rd to 5th. And they're pouring concrete from 3rd to College, and they'll keep moving through there. Tomorrow, you'll notice a closure on 3rd Street from Main to Lion while the contractor fills in all the landscaping areas with dirt, some of the rocks that go in there, and just doing some work in there to fill in. That should be maybe a half a day closure, I would expect, but we'll see how things go. Lastly, I don't believe I've updated the council. I think Mayor Burns is aware, but not the rest of the council, that we did receive an active transportation grant for some various improvements on the trail network in our community. At least I don't remember explaining this to the council, but we had put in an application. We'd asked your permission to put an application in for an RRFB crossing on County Road 7 near the river by the bridge where we have a trail crossing. It would also realign the trail to go straight across the road. We also have in that project in RRFB at US 59 and A Street to have another safer crossing midway between traffic signals. And there's a trail extension along US 59, parallel with 59 in front of Aldi from Boyer down to Windstar. So that's all in that package. It's I think a roughly $360,000 grant. As soon as we work out some cost things and figure out what's eligible and what isn't, we'll bring something forward to council. But at time of application, we'd ask council that if we were awarded a project, that we'd likely bring an engineering proposal from Bolton and Mink to put that one together, because they helped us with that grant. And it's a 100% grant, so all the costs, there's no local requirement for a local match, but we'll have to see how we start to put the plans together if we have enough money there. I would expect that any matching or extra money would come from our state aid account, so no local hit on the budget. So that's all I've got. I can answer any questions if you've got them.
Jason, thank you for bringing that up. That's a very welcome and good project, and 100% funding is good. The A and Highway 59 signalization for the pedestrian activated crossing there. We should be sure to let the school board know, because it was actually one of the school board members who brought that to our attention during the discussion of the trail that is also in the funding kind of pipeline, the trail that would go from, I'll call it the dog park area, down to Southview to complete that connection. So it'd be good to kind of loop them in on their suggestion, and was part of the overall proposal that was now approved. So very good.
I can do that.
Okay. Pam, before we get to you, can I bop back to Sharon? And the one thing I forgot, and I'll tee this up and you can provide the details because I don't have the letter right in front of me. But several weeks ago when Senator Klobuchar was in town to celebrate the RAISE grant, the $15.4 million federal grant that will be coming to assist with our costs as well as MnDOT's costs with the Highway 19 project that's scheduled for 2025. We also had the opportunity, because she asked, is there anything else that concerns you about? And so I brought up the kind of our ongoing dilemma with not really knowing the outcome of our census appeal, which was approved, but we don't know the number. So we did receive, or they did receive, some information from the Department of Commerce and the census officials where the best that any of us can interpret the message is that sometime in early December, we may know what our actual population is. Sharon, you want to fill in the details? I might have been too curt on that, but you can.
I think you did a great job. I think they were pretty curt in their response. They do talk a lot about private data, and we really just want the number. We don't need to know addresses and things like that, but they indicated December 7th, which you said early December, but that's when we'll be looking to actually get the numbers to validate the appeal that we submitted as a city. So hopefully we get it as they stated.
Yep. So it's also a holy day, so that would be an important day. So right.
It's a day that'll live in infamy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So with that, Pam, or any other questions for Jason? If not, Pam?
Nothing for the good of the whole, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we have the remaining items on the agenda this evening that include the Planning Commission minutes from July, the Public Housing Commission second quarter minutes, the listing of cash and investments, the Independence Park Shelter Grant Award letter. And I want to pause here, and Sharon, let's spend a little bit of time talking about this. This was another grant that went into the DNR. There you have the grant letter. This is for replacement of the main shelter, which is heavily used. I think every weekend and probably a lot of weekdays, it's either reserved or used. And people that have used it really know that it is in fastly deteriorating. The structure is becoming rotted and it's probably structurally questionable. So this was really good news that they will provide this amount of funding and $210,274, which would match. And then that would also include, I believe, the replacement of a bathroom that would be either more appropriate sized as well as somewhat vandal resistant. Sharon, did I miss anything there?
I think you covered it perfectly well.
Okay. And then the remaining items on the consent agenda, or on the agenda this evening, would be the building permits and the listing of upcoming meetings. So is there anything else to come forward at this meeting this evening?
Move we adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Amanda to adjourn. And hopefully this is the last time we have to do this, but by roll call vote, Stephen?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Schroeder,
Yes.
Alcorn,
Yes.
Mulesky,
Yes.
and Burns.
And yes, and the vote was unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.